By 1984, you think you've seen all that slasher films have to offer. Everyone has copied Halloween to death already, and the formula was very simple. Until he came along.
Nightmare on Elm Street, the movie that changed a lot of filmmakers' lives and careers.
A Nightmare on Elm Street didn't just get under your skin, it was crawling under your sheets and diving deep into your dreams. Wes Craven had found the one place that you have felt safe and exploited it. Nightmare went from a movie that almost wasn't made to an international success, spawning a slew of bizarre and entertaining sequels, with some of the most imaginative kills ever witnessed.
Truly nightmarish concept beneath it that delves into all your deepest fears. It's ingenious.
Oh, Freddy Krueger. Who knew that the world would fall in love with a child-murdering pedophile? Weird.
Wes Craven was not new to the world of horror. He had previously shocked everyone with his penchant for deviant behavior in The Last House on the Left and The Hills Have Eyes. While Craven was known to us genre fans, it wouldn't be until A Nightmare on Elm Street that he would be a household name. So today on 80s Horror Memories, keep the coffee maker running and stock up on no-doze as we dive in to the world of A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
In 1984, arguably one of the best years for all things pop culture, we were catapulted onto a legendary trajectory of greatness in the entertainment scene, which would indeed shape future generations. Where does one even begin?
Welcome to America's favorite answer and question game, Jeopardy!
We were given bangers like Jump, Thriller, and When Doves Cry, while CD players became a thing. TV had everything from the A-Team to Inspector Gadget.
Where's the beef?
It's right here, my dude. I talk a lot about how everything weird, creepy, and macabre shaped me. Nightmare on Elm Street put everything that I had sought out into one film. When I was little, I had truly bizarre dreams that somehow would still follow me into adulthood. You go to the movies to escape what's scary about life. It's an easier way to face your fears and somehow subconsciously practice the art of courage. Nightmare was the first time I had put myself in the driver's seat to experience the worst of the worst. Really, that was by Wes's own design. One part encounters an ominous character, and the other part is based on a set of stories straight out of the times. While the idea of exploring dreams and nightmares in horror had already been done beautifully in The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and even Eyes Without a Face, this was something new, a supernatural, malevolent entity who could kill a person in their dreams was a unique and chilling twist on the slasher genre. I mean, everyone has an Elm Street, right?
Every town has an Elm Street.
But you can tell the story of how Nightmare came to fruition without New Line Cinema and Robert Shaye. The ever-ambitious Shaye had scheduled some meetings with younger directors, including Tobe Hooper and Joe Dante, with Wes being unavailable at the time. Shaye decided to call Wes anyway, and Wes was very unimpressed. Shaye persisted nonetheless, especially after hearing Wes's pitch for Nightmare. Wes put Shaye on pause, telling him that other people were reviewing the script. And finally, 9 months later, after no one responded to the script, Shaye got his wish, or Nightmare, for $5,000. You have 32 days and an extremely modest budget, but have to do whatever you can to make it seem like the opposite. Oh boy. Nightmare had the perfect team to make this happen. A cinematographer looking for perfection wearing an eye patch while filming, a talented team of effects artists, and a writer-director who would not settle for anything less than his vision.
It's something that I think was very relatable to anyone. I suffered from night terrors. I suffered from nightmares. And so you again, knew things to be afraid of. Going to sleep. Up to that point, going to sleep felt like a reprieve. It was a chance to reset. And now Wes Craven comes in and says, fuck you in your sleep, meet Freddy Krueger.
Nightmare stuck with you for a billion different reasons. To even evoke the name Freddy Krueger, a perfect image is created in the minds of those who have seen him. His glove adorned with finger blades, the fedora, and a red and green sweater that has been snuck in every nook and cranny within pop culture.
You can run, but you can't hide, bitch!
This is the first image that the film presents us with before the title hits the screen. I remember complete silence in the theater when I first saw it. There wasn't a peep from anyone in the audience until Krueger reached around and grabbed Tina in her dream. What's brilliant about this scene is that it immediately immerses us into the familiar. We've all been there, running down a hallway that feels endless. And you aren't even running right. The mechanics of it are all wrong, but there's just nothing that you can do about it. You're not in control anymore. The idea of being caught in a dream you may not wake up from wasn't entirely new, but it was in this context. Wes had read a string of articles in the Los Angeles Times chronicling survivors of the Cambodia killing fields and their stories of being followed by someone in their dreams. One of these articles in particular had struck a chord in the director due to the rather creepy details. This young man had told his parents several times that he couldn't sleep or something bad would happen to him. This forced him to stay awake any way that he could. When his parents finally convinced him to get some rest, it would be a sleep he would never come out of. The investigators on the scene said that they found sleeping pills and a coffee pot in his closet. What about this man stalking the dreams? This was based on a particular traumatic event from Wes's childhood. When he was about 10 years old, Wes woke from his sleep only to look outside, where his eyes met those of a drunken drifter. The drifter then gave him the most unsettling smile. He felt the joy that this man got from terrifying a child and tearing away at his innocence. This stayed with him for the rest of his life. But that's the essence of Freddy. He is a god.
This is God.
One of the biggest things about Freddy is that he's allowed to have some personality. This is what sets him apart from damn near every slasher at this point. He's not cold and quiet. He's animated, laughing at your pain, and making quips about it.
I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy.
Wes didn't want to obstruct his face for this exact reason, and it paid off beautifully. Englund sort of put it best when he said that Freddy knows what you're afraid of, what's in your underwear drawer or your diary. He knows your weakness and will exploit it. Another thing that makes the movie stand out is the spectacular uniqueness of the kills and imagery created by Craven and the special effects team. For me, this is why Nightmare stands out amongst the slashers before it. Predictability. There was no way anyone could have called what they saw in this film. You have to know that no one saw what would happen with Tina, or even Glenn. This is the one that remains a standout. Well, aside from Freddy himself. If you were to ask someone in the 80s, or even now, the kills stuck with you. Tina fights for her life against Freddy and is thrown around in her room. Glenn gets sucked up into his bed and then blood gushes out in his place and covers the room in red. It was a lot like what we had experienced with the elevator scene in The Shining, but with a bit more intensity. How could your brain even process these things? I mean, who was sick enough to even think of this stuff? But I will tell you, this was some of the most metal shit I had ever seen.
Utterly startling gore scenes. I mean, even today, watching those, they're so horrifically conceived.
The cast, a mix of newcomers and veterans, sold us on the realism of Elm Street. Heather Langenkamp killed her audition with her down-to-earth qualities and a little moment where she makes a claw noise.
Nancy.
Amanda Weiss deserves just as much acclaim as Langenkamp regarding her portrayal of Tina. While her boyfriend Rod, played by Sue Garcia, gets more of the runtime, Tina's scenes stick with you forever. I mean, remember the body bag? Most famously of all the cast was Johnny Depp. Craven was said to have an eye when it came to casting new talent. Depp may have been his greatest find of all. Not only was he a good-looking dude, but he immediately had that on-screen charisma. There's something about him that was mysterious yet also attainable. Now, I do need to do a slight segue. One of the reasons Wes's movies age as well as they do is the choice of young actors and the relatability. You can absolutely identify with the struggle of being in that gray area between childhood and adulthood. Life is way more bumpy, and you are going through this journey of the new and unknown. You don't want to be treated like a kid and want to be seen more as an adult. Nancy is a prime example of this. She takes charge and challenges the adults in her life being headstrong and what she's seeing and experiencing. She's facing the monster head on and refuses to be a victim. We've all had to face our own fears at some point in our lives, and we can see ourselves in someone like Nancy.
You're nothing. You're shit.
I think the thing about Nightmare on Elm Street, and I think the genius of Wes Craven, is just how much it sort of reflects Freudian psychology. I mean, she's literally looking into the mirror saying, it isn't real, and from the mirror comes the very thing that has been haunting her and breaks through.
Back to our cast, John Saxon was the most familiar of all the actors. He had already been acquainted with the world of horror with Dario Argento's Tenebrae and Jeffrey Bloom's Blood Beach. And one of my favorite films of all time, Enter the Dragon, starring the one and only Bruce Lee. Ronnie Blakely, who I adored from the False Prophet episode of Tales from the Dark Side, brings a vulnerability and complexity to Nancy's mom, Marge. Of all the actors here, we have to shine our spotlight on Freddy himself. Portrayed by Robert Englund. All my sci-fi friendlies out there already knew him from his time as Willie on V, which was a far cry from the monster that would make him famous. Englund's chops as a classically trained actor lent him to bring something unique and sinister to his iconic role. When developing who Freddy was, Englund had a few characters in mind. He would exude the swagger of Jimmy Cagney, the eerie presence of Nosferatu, and embody the intricate personas for which Sergio Leone was renowned. Oh, and we can't forget the hat stylings of The Shadow. Charles Bernstein's score was electric due to the film being low budget. The composer was already skilled at creating terrifying atmospheres, having composed scores for The Entity, Cujo, Love at First Bite, and Sweet Kill. Bernstein didn't consider himself much of a horror fan though. He just went off sounds that would scare him and figured it would likely scare others. When discussing scores for horror flicks, Carpenter's iconic Halloween theme is brought up as well as the However, this one sort of cuts through your senses with a sharp knife. That paired with the lullaby of 1-2 Freddy's Coming for You, it's hard to imagine that any other score could take residence here.
Everything about it, I think, was iconic and perfect.
There shouldn't be any question as to why we're still talking about the legacy that is A Nightmare on Elm Street today. Freddy was a filthy child murderer, as Marge so eloquently puts it, and we treated him like a rock star. Conveniently, Ride the Lightning and this movie happened to be released in the same year. Freddy had everything. A 1-800 number, a VJ spot on MTV, hell, even former President Bush Sr. name-dropped him. While Robert Englund dazzles wherever you put him, Freddy will be a role that he can never top, and neither will anyone else. We saw what happened when someone else decided to take the dare, and Freddy is not a role that can be easily replicated. If you haven't already noticed, when the topic of recasting is brought up, there's no substitute. It's always flat out a role that belongs to Englund. Sorry, Kevin Bacon. We also had Wes Craven.
You know, I knew him a little. He wrote an introduction for a graphic novel I did, and we got a chance to talk a few times. But I would say when he was really good, had an ability to get to some very deep, dark, levels of human fear.
When Mick Garris asked Wes what he wouldn't do, he responded saying that he wouldn't show stupidity, lack of imagination, or something someone has done better. He felt the same sentiment for the teens watching his movies, which is why I think he had longevity within the genre. He said many times that kids were smart and that he didn't need to keep up with them in terms of what was cool. All you needed to do was listen. This man's journey into becoming a director was unexpected by all accounts, even his own. Raised in a strict Baptist household with a repressed childhood, only exposed to Disney movies, then later becoming a humanities professor, he had absolutely no intent on making scary movies, but ended up saving the genre later down the road. He wasn't just following the curve, he often shaped and created it himself. Nightmare on Elm Street hits every high note and then some. This was a groundbreaking departure from the slasher genre, blending in psychological elements seamlessly. While the 80s represented a different genre, the standard of what worked then compared to what resonates today has evolved significantly. Modern horror could undoubtedly learn valuable lessons from the Nightmare playbook. It may no longer carry its underdog status, but it's clawed its ways into the annals of cinematic history, leaving an indelible mark that still haunts our dreams.
We hope you enjoyed our dive into the year 1984. Next up, things get a little hairy in Teen Wolf. Party like a Dead Star in Return of the Living Dead. Take a science experiment with Dr. Herbert West and become suspicious of a new neighbor in Fright Night. Until next time, gore hounds.
Hi friends, your humble narrator Tyler Nichols here, and I hope that you enjoyed that episode of 80s Horror Memories. If you missed our previous episode, click over here. If you want to see more from our series, click up here. And if you're not subscribed yet, what are you doing? Subscribe right here. And most importantly, stay spooky, folks.